Hi, I'm Sky, it's Oscars Day, and I've watched every single film nominated for Best Picture, and I'm here to recommend you 10 films to watch alongside each of the nominees. I'll also be ranking the films from my least favorite to my favorite, and I've split the video into chapters, so feel free to skip to any of them. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below which of these films is your favorite. If you watched Train Dreams, you should also watch Lynn Ramsey's Die My Love, both featuring couples living in a cabin in the woods. Both are literary adaptations, both set in Northwest America. Populated by English, Irish, and Australian actors, each led by Joe Edgerton and Jennifer Lawrence, who were in Red Sparrow together. Both have scene-stealing performances from older supporting characters. Shout out Sissy Spacek, who should have been nominated everywhere. And both have forest fires as big moments in film. So I'd say they're a pretty good double bill. If you watch Frankenstein, you should also watch The Bride, which I find myself loving the madness of it all despite what everyone says. On one hand, there's Guillermo del Toro, using the same framing device as Mary Shelley's novel, to tell the story both through Dr. Frankenstein's and the monster's perspectives. And on the other hand, you can be Maggie Gyllenhaal, reinvigorating the story with a backdrop of the 1930s, where Mary Shelley possesses Jessie Buckley's Ida, who becomes the bride of Frankenstein. Yet both adaptations foregrounds the humanity of the monsters. In Del Toro's version, Jacob Elordi's The Creature reads literature with the help of the blind man. And in The Bride, Frankenstein brings the bride to a cinema to experience Jake Gyllenhaal on the big screen. It is through art that these monsters become more human, and at times even more humane than the people around them. It's through watching films that we can become Fred and Ginger, Bonnie and Clyde, and even Frankenstein and the Bride. If you watch Bugonia, you should also watch All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. There are many ways to look at Yorgos Lanthimos' Bugonia, and its commentary on Big Pharma is certainly one of them. Emma Stone's character is the CEO of a pharmaceutical company who is ignorant and careless about patients like Jesse Plemons' character's mother. No matter how absurd Bugonia is, Big Pharma exploiting patients is a very real issue, as seen in Laura Poitras' Oscar-nominated documentary All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. It follows photographer and activist Nan Goldin's life, tracing how her art intertwines with activism. From her work during the AIDS epidemic, to her bringing attention to the opioid crisis, which is caused by the overprescription of drugs. It certainly will enrich your perspectives on how these big companies exploit people for profit. And after a crazy film like Bugonia, you certainly want something that's more grounding to bring you back to earth. If you watch one battle after another, you should also watch Born in Flames by Lizzie Borden, also featuring strong black women fighting against the system. One battle has been under fire a little bit, from Paul Thomas Anderson dancing around questions about politics, to some black women criticizing the sexualization of Tiana Taylor's Clephidia. So look no further than a feminist film from over 40 years ago, which has a more radical and perhaps more relevant take on how women work as a community to fight against the patriarchy. Born in Flames is set in a dystopian America, 10 years onwards after the Socialist Democratic Revolution, where women's rights are still in danger and the government is still corrupt. And it's down to female radio hosts and newspaper editors to broadcast their voices to the public and to organize women in local communities to protest. It's indeed as if there's always one battle after another, and that a true revolution that will bring equal rights to everyone will take time and persistence across generations. If you've watched Marty Supreme, you should also watch Kelly Reichardt's The Mastermind. Timothée Chalamet's Marty Mauser and Josh O'Connor's JB are two sides of a coin. Marty doesn't have the most glamorous upbringing, but he has the goal to become the best in table tennis, whereas JB is born privileged, yet he seemingly has no goal in life other than a terribly planned heist. Both Marty and JB are selfish men who take actions that only benefits themselves, while their families have to suffer the consequences of their absence. Marty Supreme is set against the backdrop of post-World War II, when Marty's table tennis matches are inevitably tied with the national tensions between the US and Japan. And for JB, while Americans are protesting on the Vietnam War, all he cares about is himself. Both films point to how important it is to be more aware of the people around us and the world that we live in, and not to get get lost in our own egos and wants. And after watching such an intense film like Marty Supreme, The Mastermind is the exact type of film with a gentle pace that would help you recover. If you watch Hamnet, you should also watch Petite Maman. Chloe Zhao's Hamnet is quite a heavy film about Jessie Buckley's Agnes and Paul Mescal's Shakespeare losing their child and how they deal with the grief. And I fully bawled my eyes out watching it. And I know you'll probably cry watching Petite Maman as well, but it is a healing type of crying. In Celine Sciamma's film, after young Nellie's grandmother passed away, she noticed her mum's grief, and she travels back in time to talk to her mum when she was a child to understand her grief. Here we see the magic ability of art to transcend the borders of time, and in Hamnet's case, it is a transcendence between the borders of life and death. It is through the play of Hamlet that we see Shakespeare fulfill the dreams of his son who passed away. And it's also how Agnes heals through reaching for the actor who plays Hamlet. And it also helps that both films have beautiful naturalistic cinematography capturing how people deal with their grief by interacting with the nature around them. If you've watched Sinners, you should also watch Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which features Chadwick Boseman's final performance. They both are beautiful films from African Americans celebrating the history of blues music. And in the films, it is their culture, their voices that white people prey on. In Ma Rainey, Viola Davis plays Ma, who refuses to sing unless the white music producers provide her with what she wants. And in Sinners, it is symbolized through Remick, who desperately wants to turn Sammy into a vampire. It's also interesting to see how this plays out in real time with how BAFTAs mishandled the situation and puts black people and people with Tourette's in danger. What Jamie Lawson said,
"You want to celebrate our art, but you won't protect."
That is not only a response to the situation, but it's also a representation of what happened to artists of color over the years. This is why Ryan Coogler signing the deal to get back Sinners' full IP after 25 years is so important. It is to prevent the cycles of exploitation within a white-dominated industry, to protect his own voice, like how Sammy and Ma Rainey both did. If you watch The Secret Agent, you should also watch Ana Mulher's The Second Mother. Both are Brazilian films that looks into the country's social issues. Kleber Mendonça Filho's film is a political thriller centered around Wagner Moura's Armando, who flees from persecution in Recife, reflecting on the amnesia around the country's authoritarian past. And that amnesia feeds into The Second Mother, which is set in contemporary Brazil. Regina Casés Val works as a housemaid for a rich family in Sao Paulo and has a certain perception on what she can or can't do, silently accepting the mistreatment from her boss. What I find interesting is how both films use the spaces politically. Val is relegated to sleep in a cramped room when there is an unused guest room. There are clear drawn class borders within the house's architecture. This is vastly different than Donna Sebastiana's refuge in The Secret Agent, where she welcomed everyone as equals, no matter their backgrounds. It is this communal spirit that capitalists wants to dismantle, forcing people into different classes and allow the rich to continue exploiting the poor. And both films tell us we have to fight against that. If you watch Sentimental Value, you should also watch My Settlings the Girls. Both are Scandinavian films about how art imitates life. Joachim Trier's film is about an aging director played by Stellan Skarsgård, who tries to direct a film after a long hiatus. His script is about his mother, yet it also coincidentally lines up with his daughter's experience, and it's through making the film that the ignorant father reconnects with his daughters. Whereas for the girls, My Settling adapts an old play, Lysistrata, where three actresses' lives off stage mirror the play on stage. These three women insist on their artistic careers as performers, when the society and their families expect them to focus on only being housewives. Both films put forward how the lives of artists intertwine with their work, and that's why art is beautiful. There are real human emotions behind them. Thanks for watching my video. That's every film nominated for Best Picture, right? If you watch F1, so you like cars? You like cars? So you like cars. Thanks for sticking around to the very end. Please do like, subscribe, and share my videos with others if you like what I'm doing. And here's to another year of amazing movies.